The Earth's sky was a deep blue, something Amy had never seen on her home planet, Elendra. There, the skies were a shimmering violet, always illuminated by three suns orbiting in harmony. Here, however, everything seemed darker and more threatening. Amy's abrupt descent was marked by searing heat and a flash of light that temporarily blinded her. Upon landing, Amy found herself in a dense forest. Giant trees with thick green leaves formed a canopy that blocked most of the sunlight. The ground was covered in undergrowth, fallen leaves, and exposed roots. The air was heavy and humid, with strange sounds echoing from all directions. The forest animals made unfamiliar noises that scared Amy. She had never experienced such a hostile environment. Amy looked around, trying to process her new surroundings. Her large, dark eyes reflected the little light that penetrated the forest. Her body, adapted to the lower gravity of Elendra, moved with difficulty on the denser earth ground. She struggled to stand, her trembling limbs giving way under her own weight. As she wandered, something small and agile caught her attention. A squirrel, with its bushy tail and curious eyes, watched her from a low branch. The animal was an intriguing sight for Amy, who had never seen a similar creature. She approached slowly, trying not to scare it. The squirrel, however, was quick. With a sudden movement, it jumped from the branch to another, disappearing into the dense foliage. Amy recoiled, frightened, her alien heart pounding uncontrollably. She had never felt fear like this before. Elendra was a place of order and predictability, but Earth was chaotic and full of unknown dangers. After a few hours of cautious exploration, Amy realized she needed to hide. Daylight was fading, and the forest was becoming increasingly threatening. She found a small cave, partially hidden by thorny bushes. With effort, she crawled inside and settled as best she could, trying to ignore the growing discomfort and fear. Tom was in his lab, immersed in his experiments. He was a renowned scientist, known for his research on extraterrestrial life. His obsession with finding evidence of life beyond Earth had led him to explore remote and dangerous places. That night, he was analyzing satellite data when a strange signal appeared on his screen. "Sarah, come see this," he called to his colleague and friend. Sarah, a skeptical and practical scientist, entered the lab with a tired expression. "What is it now, Tom?" "Another anomaly you think is alien life?" she asked, her voice laden with sarcasm. "No, this is different," Tom insisted. "Look, the signal is strong and consistent. It could be a ship or something else." Sarah sighed but approached to look. "It could be anything, Tom. A falling satellite, a piece of space junk. Let's not jump to conclusions." Tom ignored Sarah's skepticism. He knew something was happening. Determined to investigate, he grabbed his equipment and headed towards the signal's location, a dense forest a few miles away. Upon arrival, Tom began searching for anything unusual. He walked for hours, scanning the environment with his instruments. Finally, he found something. A small cave with signs of recent movement at the entrance. He approached cautiously, illuminating the interior with his flashlight. "Who's there?" he called, his voice echoing in the cave. There was no response. He entered, moving slowly. Inside, he found Amy. His eyes widened at the sight of the alien creature huddled in the corner. She was unlike anything he had ever seen. Her body was slender, with iridescent bluish skin. Her large, dark eyes watched him with a mixture of fear and curiosity. "My God," Tom murmured. You're real." Amy didn't understand Tom's words, but his expression and tone of voice reassured her a little. She realized he wasn't an immediate threat. With effort, she tried to communicate, emitting soft, melodious sounds, but Tom couldn't understand. He knelt down and extended his hand slowly. "I won't hurt you," he said calmly. Amy hesitated, but Tom's gentle expression encouraged her to approach. She carefully touched his hand, feeling the different texture of his human skin. Tom knew he needed to get Amy out of there before anyone else found her. He helped her to her feet, and together they began to leave the cave. Amy moved with difficulty, but Tom supported her, guiding her through the forest. As they walked back to the lab, Tom felt a mixture of excitement and apprehension. He knew Amy's discovery was monumental, but he also knew he needed to protect her. If the government or other entities discovered her existence, she could be in great danger. When they arrived at the lab, Sarah was waiting. "So, what did you find?" she asked, impatience evident in her voice. Tom hesitated before opening the door to reveal Amy. Sarah's jaw dropped. "My God! This is impossible," she murmured, stepping back. "It's real, Sarah," Tom said softly. "And we need to help her." Sarah looked from Tom to Amy, still trying to process what she was seeing. Finally, she nodded. "All right. But we need to be extremely careful. This is bigger than anything we've ever faced." Tom and Sarah began preparing a safe place for Amy in the lab, while trying to learn more about her origin and how they could help her survive on Earth. Amy's journey was just beginning, and she would need all the help she could get to face the challenges ahead. In the lab, Tom and Sarah worked hard to provide Amy with a safe and comfortable environment. Time passed slowly as they tried to understand the alien creature who had fallen into their world. Tom was fascinated, while Sarah maintained a cautious stance. Amy, for her part, felt isolated and lonely. The nights were particularly difficult when she closed her eyes and was transported back to Elendra in her memories. Elendra, with its violet skies and serene landscapes, was always present in her mind. On one of those nights, Amy remembered her family. She recalled her mother, a serene and wise figure, who always told her stories about other worlds. Her father was an explorer, and she had inherited from him the desire to discover the unknown. Amy saw herself again at Elendra's spaceport, saying goodbye to her family before embarking on her exploration mission. The goal of her mission was simple, but vital, to seek new resources and meet other forms of life that could help Elendra thrive. The mission, however, took an unexpected turn when her ship was hit by a cosmic storm and crashed on Earth. Amy remembered the panic she felt, the pain of the fall, and the loneliness that followed. Tom noticed the sadness in Amy's eyes and felt a growing empathy for her. He spent hours trying to communicate, using drawings, gestures, and anything else that could help them understand each other. Gradually, Amy began to trust him. "She's starting to trust me," Tom told Sarah one morning as they drank coffee in the lab. "That's good, Tom, but we need to be realistic. What will we do if she's discovered?" "The implications are huge," Sarah responded, worried. "I know. But for now, our job is to protect her and learn from her," Tom insisted, looking at the door behind which Amy was resting. Amy began to adapt to her new reality. She watched Tom and Sarah, trying to understand their language and behavior. Her attempts at communication improved, and soon they managed to establish a basic system of signs and drawings to converse. One afternoon, while Tom and Amy were drawing together, he showed a drawing of Elendra that Amy had made. "This is your planet, isn't it?" Tom asked, pointing to the drawing. Amy nodded, touching the paper lovingly. She tried to explain, using gestures and sounds, the beauty of her world and the sadness of being so far from it. Sarah, watching from a distance, began to realize the depth of the situation. She saw the pain in Amy's eyes and Tom's dedication to understanding and helping the alien. Slowly, Sarah began to set aside her skepticism and consider the importance of what they were doing. One night, after a long day of work, Sarah decided to talk to Tom about her concerns. "Tom, I know you're doing your best to help Amy. And I want to help too, but we need to be strategic. If anyone finds out we're harboring an alien, the consequences could be disastrous for all of us, including Amy," Sarah said, her voice serious. "I understand, Sarah. And you're right. We need to be careful. But I also believe Amy is the key to something bigger. Maybe a bridge between our worlds," Tom responded, his gaze determined. Over time, the relationship between Tom, Sarah, and Amy became more solid. They began to work together, with Sarah finally accepting Amy's presence and contributing her ideas to keep the alien safe and continue the research. Amy, in turn, began to trust Sarah more, seeing her as an ally despite her initial distrust. One afternoon, while Tom was out buying supplies, Sarah and Amy had a meaningful conversation. Sarah, trying to break the barrier between them, began to draw figures on paper, showing simple things from everyday human life. Amy watched attentively, learning more and more about Earth. Sarah, seizing the moment, drew a circle and pointed to the sky, trying to explain the concept of planets. Amy understood and drew 3 suns, indicating her home planet. Sarah was fascinated. "You come from a place with 3 suns?" "That's incredible," Sarah murmured, amazed. Amy smiled, feeling a connection growing between them. Each day, Amy became more adapted to life on Earth, and Tom and Sarah learned more about Alindra and Amy's mission. They discovered that the cosmic storm that brought down Amy's ship was a rare phenomenon that could be tracked, offering a possible hope of finding a way to send her back home. But as Tom, Sarah, and Amy worked together, a shadow of danger loomed over them. The government and other entities were getting closer to discovering Amy's presence. They needed to be quick and careful in their actions to protect Amy and ensure she had a chance to return home. Life in the lab continued, but not without tension. Amy felt a growing internal conflict. Every time she thought of Alindra, homesickness gripped her heart. However, she was also beginning to adapt to Earth, understanding its inhabitants better and forming unexpected bonds with Tom and, surprisingly, even with Sarah. Tom, on the other hand, was torn between his desire to protect Amy and the need to continue his research. He knew that each passing day made the situation more dangerous, especially since the government was beginning to suspect something unusual. The constant presence of drones and helicopters near the lab was a constant reminder of the danger. "We need to make a decision, Tom," said Sarah, breaking the tense silence of a morning. "We can't go on like this indefinitely. She needs real help." "I know, Sarah. But we can't just hand her over. They'll treat her like a lab rat, and that's something I can't allow," Tom responded, frustrated. "So, what do you suggest? Run away? Hide forever?" Sarah crossed her arms, her tone clearly showing the urgency she felt. Amy, who had been closely observing the two, felt the tension increase. She knew her presence was causing problems, but the idea of being captured and studied like an object was terrifying. She slowly approached, touching Tom's arm and pointing to a drawing she had made the previous night. It was a representation of Alindra, with the 3 suns shining in the sky. Tom looked at the drawing and then at Amy. "You want to go home, don't you?" he asked softly. Amy nodded, but her eyes showed deep sadness. She was also beginning to care about Tom and Sarah. Earth, despite all its dangers, had become a place where she found friendship and compassion. While discussing their options, an alert on the lab's security monitors sounded. A government search team was approaching. Tom and Sarah exchanged alarmed looks. "We have to get out of here, now," Tom exclaimed. They quickly gathered the essentials and prepared to flee. However, Amy stopped abruptly, staring intently at the screen showing the search team. With a determined gesture, she raised her hand and, to Tom and Sarah's surprise, a glowing aura began to emanate from her body. The energy formed a barrier around the lab, concealing them from detectors. "She has abilities we didn't know about," said Sarah, amazed and frightened at the same time. "This could be the key to our survival." With the new discovery of Amy's abilities, Tom and Sarah felt a renewed hope. However, Sarah's trust was about to be shaken. She began to ponder the implications of these abilities and what it meant to keep them secret. The journey to a safer location was long and fraught with danger. They hid in dense forests and avoided main roads to evade detection. During one of these stops, Amy felt an intense connection with the surrounding nature. She closed her eyes, and, with a subtle gesture, the surrounding plants began to respond to her presence, flowers blooming, and leaves moving as if guided by an invisible breeze. Tom watched in amazement. "You are incredible, Amy." These abilities. They're amazing. You really could be the key to greater understanding between our worlds. Sarah, however, was becoming increasingly uneasy. She moved away from the group, secretly taking out her phone and dialing a number. Agent Miller, it's Sarah. I have information about the creature you're looking for. But I need guarantees of safety for me and Tom. Sarah's heart raced as she spoke. She knew she was betraying Tom's trust and possibly putting Amy in great danger, but she felt she had no choice. She couldn't live on the run and feared what Amy's abilities could cause if they fell into the wrong hands. The next morning, as Tom prepared coffee, Sarah felt the weight of her decision. Amy approached her, touching her arm in a gesture of friendship. Sarah swallowed hard, her hands trembling slightly. Before she could respond, they heard the sound of approaching vehicles. "Tom, we have company," Sarah shouted, panic evident in her voice. Tom ran outside, seeing government vehicles approaching. "How did they find us so quickly?" he asked, looking accusingly at Sarah. Sarah averted her gaze, unable to face Tom. I did what I thought was right. We can't keep running forever." Tom felt a wave of anger and disappointment, but there was no time to argue. "Amy, we need your help," he called desperately. Amy, realizing the danger, used her abilities to create a barrier around them, but this time the energy seemed unstable. She was exhausted and emotionally overwhelmed. Government agents surrounded the group, weapons drawn. The leader, Agent Miller, stepped forward. "We're here to ensure everyone's safety. We don't want to hurt anyone, but the creature needs to come with us." Tom positioned himself between Amy and the agents. "She's not a creature, she's an intelligent being and deserves respect. We're not letting her go." Before the situation could deteriorate further, Amy made a decision. She lowered the barrier and approached Miller, her eyes fixed on his. She gently touched Tom's head, conveying a sense of peace and acceptance. "No!" Tom shouted, trying to hold her back, but Amy had already decided. She knew that to protect her new friends, she needed to surrender. Sarah, tears in her eyes, watched the scene with an unbearable weight of guilt. As Amy was taken away, she looked back one last time, her eyes meeting Tom's. The message was clear: "Thank you for everything." Tom fell to his knees, feeling a mix of anger, sadness, and despair. Sarah knelt beside him, trying to offer some comfort, but knowing her actions had caused this pain. Amy's story wasn't over, but for Tom and Sarah, this was a definitive turning point. They needed to find a way to rescue Amy and correct the mistakes they had made, aware that the road ahead would be more dangerous than they could ever imagine. Tom's lab was in ruins. Broken equipment and scattered documents were the remnants of a government raid. Tom and Sarah had managed to escape at the last minute, but Amy wasn't with them. She was in custody, locked in a secret facility, subjected to experiments and interrogations. Tom and Sarah hid in a small shelter in the mountains, trying to plan a way to rescue Amy. Tom was exhausted, but his determination remained intact. He felt guilty of Sarah's betrayal, but knew he needed her for any chance of success. "We have to get her out of there, Sarah." "No matter what it costs," Tom said, his eyes burning with fervor. Sarah, laden with guilt, nodded. "I know, Tom. And I'll do whatever it takes to make up for my mistake. I was wrong, and now I have to do the right thing." As they devised a plan, Amy was suffering at the hands of government scientists. They tested her, studied her abilities, and tried to understand her origin. During one of these tests, Amy was induced into a deep trance, and her memories began to surface, revealing the true purpose of her mission on Earth. She wasn't just exploring. Amy had been sent to find a way to save Elendra, which was slowly dying. The 3 suns of her planet were approaching an extinction cycle, and the natural resources were depleted. Amy was sent with the hope of discovering new sources of energy or technology that could help revitalize her world. Tom and Sarah, with no time to lose, managed to track the location of the facility where Amy was being held. With the help of some of Tom's old colleagues, they planned a daring invasion. They would use chaos as a distraction to rescue Amy. On the planned night, Tom and Sarah approached the facility stealthily. Using hacking devices and disguises, they managed to get inside. Tom's heart raced as they neared the cells where Amy was held. When they finally found her, she was visibly weakened, but her eyes still shone with determination. "Tom! Sarah!" Amy exclaimed, her voice weak but full of hope. "We're here to get you out, Amy," Tom said, holding her hand. "We're going home." With Amy weakened, the group had to move quickly and cautiously. Sarah used her technical knowledge to disable alarms and clear the way. However, the internal alarm was triggered, and the facility quickly went on high alert. The group ran through the facility's corridors, with guards and scientists on their tail. Amy, despite her weakness, used her abilities to create temporary barriers, helping to delay their pursuers. However, she knew she was quickly depleting her energy. They reached a high-security area, where one last barrier separated them from freedom. Tom and Sarah fought off the guards, while Amy concentrated on opening the door with her remaining energy. Feeling the weight of the sacrifice she was about to make, Amy looked at Tom and Sarah. "I can do this," Amy said, her voice trembling but resolute. "But you have to trust me." "We're with you, Amy," Tom replied, his voice firm. "We're getting out of here together." Amy closed her eyes and channeled all her energy. The security door began to tremble and finally opened with a crash. Tom and Sarah supported her as they ran outside, but they were soon surrounded by more guards and government vehicles. Desperate, Amy made one last effort. She created an energy blast that disabled all electronic devices around, including the guards' weapons. The blast was so intense it created a shockwave, knocking down all pursuers and creating an opportunity for the group to escape. "Now, Tom. Sarah. Let's go," Amy shouted, using her last strength to keep them protected. Tom and Sarah carried her to a vehicle they had prepared and sped away from the facility. The path to freedom was fraught with challenges, but Amy's determination to protect her friends and her mission guided them. As they fled, Amy began to lose consciousness. "Tom. Sarah. You need to know the truth," she murmured, her voice weak. "My mission here was to save my world. But now, I see that saving you is also important." Sarah, with tears in her eyes, held Amy's hand. "You've done more for us than we can express, Amy. We'll find a way to help you." Finally, they reached a safe hideout, where Amy could rest and recover her strength. Tom and Sarah, determined to continue fighting for her, began planning the next steps. "We need to find a way to stabilize her abilities and maybe, in time, help her return to Elendra," Tom said, looking at Amy with hope. Sarah, finally redeemed, was determined to support the cause. "We'll do this together. For Amy, for Elendra, and for a future where our worlds can coexist." Amy smiled, feeling at peace for the first time since she arrived on Earth. Despite the challenges, she knew she was no longer alone. With Tom and Sarah by her side, there was hope for a better future, not just for Elendra, but also for Earth. And so, Amy's journey continued, with new challenges and discoveries ahead. But now, she had allies and friends ready to face any adversity alongside her. Together, they would work to overcome the barriers between their worlds, seeking a future where friendship and understanding transcended the boundaries of space and time.